Evening, this is Jeff.
Good evening, Jeff. Daniel Ott from the Edge television broadcast.
How are you, Daniel?
Well, I'm outstanding as usual, man. I got the fire in the belly right now. I was having a ranting point breakdown there, talking about the terrorist attack in London, and then of course I had heartburn based on Kathy Griffin's face. So I had a lot of things going on before the program. I mean, that redheaded bitch got to go. You know what I'm saying? But listen, hey, Jeff, welcome back to the show, and we're going to talk about the progress you made. You're making in the Missouri homestead, and we'll talk about some things that we didn't talk about last time. We're going to give some updates. Now, I did give people a full disclosure that I actually took a tour down there. We'll talk about that here in just a bit. But Jeff, before we do, just tell the people who you are and what you're about.
Okay. Well, hopefully I'm coming in clear. Is my signal okay, Daniel?
Yeah, we're getting it. Sounds like typical cell phone.
Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, we can go into that later. So what we're doing is we're putting together a community of believers, and by believers, that doesn't mean that we believe that one of the dozens of scenarios is going to happen. I mean believers in Christ. This is a Christian community, just in case the things that are set in motion are things that we cannot mitigate the outcome, and it's all in the hands of God. We're going to do everything we can to pull together, and hopefully we're going to be chosen as one of these remnant communities. I told you, I've told so many people, I'm about as bad as they get with interpreting Bible scripture. I've got to ask everyone about it. So my place is just the place of a regular guy that takes the position that if he can't do anything about it because it's all in God's hands, then wouldn't God favor us if we put a community together of his children when that day comes? And anything short of that, and we're going to give ourselves the best chance of getting through whatever is to come that we possibly can. So, I don't want to go on and on and on, Daniel, I can. So just cut me off anytime.
Okay, I'm cutting you off right now.
All right.
Hey, all right. So right now, as I mentioned, London is under attack. The remedy from the police over there, and I don't even know if they're allowed to carry guns over there, but it's run, hide, and tell. That doesn't seem like a good plan when somebody is under attack. Now, part of you're not obviously it's not a fear-based community at all. It is just a sort of being aware, being prepared. But that wouldn't be considered running and hiding, would it?
No, I would hope not. I mean, the first time that we talked, and I haven't really changed my position that I don't want to broadcast that we're certainly not taking anything for granted, and taking us for granted would probably be the wrong thing to do if you were someone, on the outside in the wrong place and time. But when you say, run and hide and tell, we still basically are looking at, we would rather be left alone. I mean, and if we can't be left alone, then of course you have to do what you have to do. But we're not looking to start a fight. We're not looking to do anything but band together as a community of people that more or less are looking for the way life should be and are just kind of fed up with the way things are changing for the worse all around us. Mm-hmm. We're a group of people that are kind of taking it amongst themselves to do something about it and build a community that, quite frankly, no one else really has something like this going on at this scale. So, you were out at the property, you saw what we're doing. I'm just rusty, Daniel. I think you were the last show that I did, and it's been months we've been building this thing, and so this is my next one. So if it seems like I'm not really practiced on all the words, I mean, the closer we can keep it to a regular conversation, the better answers I think I'm going to give, because I'm going to tend to go on and on and on just because I haven't done this a while. So yeah. I'm kind of in your hands at this point.
No, that's all right. No, your answers are about the length that'll work for the show. That's fine. Okay, so now in your opening there, you said chosen? Is there anything, or you said you would like it to be that you are chosen. So do you feel like there's a divine intervention or direction in the whole process that you're building there, the whole thing?
Well, I do feel so, and I don't mean it in a conceited way that, oh, God only picked us to do something special. I think God picks many, many, many people, millions, if not billions of people to do special things throughout their lives. I feel like my purpose is to have opened the door to this and invite others to take part in it. I wish I was insanely rich and it didn't take anything to build. So all the people that are taking part in it, of course, they're putting in the money that it takes to build these things, to have professional builders do it for you and have it prepared ahead of time. But I feel it's a calling, and it really it's almost torn my home life apart many, many times. But I'm very fortunate to have met a very strong woman that's very intelligent, and she can see that there's a little more than coincidence to how all these things came to be, that in this span of time that we've got the type of community put together that we do.
Mm-hmm. I'm putting pictures of the back in a background there of houses and lots and various things. You have multiple phases down there, and I understand that you're just about filled up in the first phase. Are you already considering a second or third phase?
Oh, sure, yeah, and we're doing as much as we can to expand the land that we actually have in the homestead. Not just the greater areas where you've got national forest and state conservation or state wildlife refuge. This is actual stuff that's deeded to the homestead that all of our members can use, and additional people, because we always knew that we could put a certain amount together on it, but we didn't know that it would halfway fill up in the first 4 months. And so if it is that the world's going to keep turning for another year, if we don't have more land in this, it's going to be kind of hard to continue to expand, because it's all based off of resources and how many people are sharing those resources. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we do have other phases planned, but we won't do anything to literally open up the building on those phases, other than to get the infrastructure ready, until this first phase is totally done, which will be sometime in the end of July, maybe the very beginning of August.
Mm-hmm. All right, so you have a plan and a date. What about the people that you that want to go there? I mean, you have on your website almost like an application, and it appears that you also say you have some sort of background check. So it looks to me like you're really looking into the type of people that you want in that.
Well, sure, and the easiest way to explain it to someone that has a question about, well, why do I have to go through a background check? Wouldn't you appreciate that everybody else that you're in the community with has gone through these background checks too? And even though they can't tell the full story, I've talked to several people that have made mistakes at some other part much earlier in life. And, we're not going to hold something against someone. It just wouldn't be very Christian to say that you made a mistake and there's no way to ever make up for it. So, if it's something that doesn't show a current pattern or a current history of behavior, and it's something that obviously looks like, well, this happened a long time ago and this person certainly changed their mind and their heart, that's the most important thing to us. But we want to make sure that we're not putting a community together where, we've got the wrong type of element in, because a background check will at least tell us if there are certain things in their history that they're not able to take care of. If someone keeps getting arrested, keeps having trouble with drugs, keeps the problems with the prescription pain medications and getting in trouble for the buying and selling, and it's just a whole litany of things. But I'll give you, for instance, someone that had something happen 7 years ago that if we were just looking at the page and making a yes or no comment, it would definitely have been a no. But getting to know this person, I can tell that they're going to be one of the most sharing, the hardest working people in the community that we've got put together. So it's not numbers on a page when it comes to the background check. It's an individual basis, but it's something that has to be there.
Okay. So now, have you actually denied somebody?
Oh, absolutely.
Really? So what triggers the the you're not going to be able to get in here type of thing?
Well, it's not money. I mean, we've had several people that have had the finances that weren't going to make it, and it's an emotional thing when someone can't take the next step when they want to. But if we have to close that door and say just not at this time, we always leave it open that sometime in the future we can reevaluate. But I had a person that was recently retired, and it was very clear through the personal interview and the subsequent next few days that they wanted this to be a recreational facility for them, and that they had no intention of pitching in to help others if that time were to come. And so if you've ever been to the property, and for those that haven't, there's a very big difference between grid up and grid down scenarios. And if we are grid up, you can work or you can not work. You can lay around in your pajamas if you want. I mean, this is as free can be. And it will be free if the grid goes down. But at the head of this, how do I answer to 100 or 200 other members in why someone won't go out and pick the tomatoes, and the tomatoes are always rotten, or they're not taken care of, or someone's not getting the eggs from the chicken coop? You just have to entertain the scenario that people aren't going to change, because in the best of times, if they can't make themselves do this, how are they going to come through in the worst of times? So that's kind of one isolated scenario, but those are the types of things that will get someone, on the outside looking in. And that's not to say that they can't change. That was just a decision that we made early on in one particular case.
In the movie Reign of Fire, it was a future where in England they found a dragon. They were digging down and a dragon escaped, and he come up through the tunnel there and whatnot. And so they showed a futuristic society where there was a community there that had huddled together and tried not to get the attention of the dragon. But they had tomato fields. And somebody in their community decided they wanted to go eat those tomatoes. Now, if somebody was to, say, pick the tomatoes at the wrong time because they felt like it was theirs, I mean, how would you handle that? If, say, somebody was doing various things like that, maybe stealing somebody's ATV or riding it or, some kind of nefarious activity. Would there be a court?
Yeah. Well, right now, there are a lot of the things that people would say, they would call them like association rules or community rules. I try to shy away of calling it anything like a homeowners association. But our future hasn't changed from the beginning to now, the way that we look at the self-governance of this community. I believe that the governing board wants that there are people living, and we have enough of the community as we build and turn these units on here in the next few weeks, that we've already got several members that are willing to be the original 7 on the self-governance board that are going to come up and they're going to arbitrate and they're going to hear grievances on these types of things. I mean, if somebody steals someone's ATV, this is a Christian community. If you step over the line, I'm sure the neighbors will tell you. I can't speak for someone in the future if that would happen. If it were me, I would have a discussion with them. If it happened again, I'd call the police. We're not a sovereign country within the Ozarks, and so we have to follow all the rules of the local governments. I mean, until there are no governments, we have to follow their rules first. And God's law supersedes that, but thou shalt not steal is certainly one of them. But when it comes to, taking more of a harvest, cheating essentially, in the way that you talked about in Reign of Fire, I'm not sure how that would turn out, because in the movie, the dragon just burnt the guys up, right?
Right.
Or at least tried to, and they saved them.
All right.
In this one, I think it would have to be a penalty. Oh, and Daniel, I've got to pick my wife and my 2 youngest kids up as the interview is going. So I'm hoping we can keep a little bit of peace and quiet. But we're going to be in the car for a couple minutes. So how would you suggest we get through that?
Oh, don't worry. Do you want to keep talking, or you need to talk to your family?
No. No, it's just
No, I'm good with
we,
I'm good with the ambience of people in the background, man. Your family. That's great.
Oh, okay.
No,
Okay.
man, it's just homey, man. This is a homey old show.
Well, here they come.
All right.
Yeah, I'm on the show. That's okay. Taking to the playground. Oh, great. Yeah, Daniel. In about 5 minutes, we're going to be at this community playground, not ours, but a different one, and we'll be able to kind of get back to a little more one-on-one.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know the amount of stress that it takes to put something like what you saw when you're out at the property together. I wasn't sure we were going to do the show, so we went to watch Guardians of the Galaxy tonight.
Oh yeah, how'd that work out?
And loved it. We had to leave before the end, so don't tell me how it turns out. But
okay. Hey, I tell you what, man. Everybody's saying that Wonder Woman's a good show too.
You know, I heard. I remember the TV show from back in the 70s. But you know, I don't know if they're going to use those same themes or not.
Hey, Jeff, you got two children? Is that it? Who's all in the car?
No. Yeah, I've got my wife.
Okay.
That you've met, and then did you meet the two youngest when you were out?
No, I'll tell you what. Pass the phone around and just tell them to say hello, Daniel. And then,
hi guys, you want to say hi to Mr. Daniel?
Hi, Daniel. It's Kelly.
Hey, Kelly.
Hi, Daniel.
Hi, who's
That's
this?
Kayla being silly. Hi, Daniel. And that's Benny being silly.
Okay, all right. Well, there you go.
All right.
Well, that means you are absolutely a normal person right there.
Well, it gets a little noisy from the back seat. So we're absolutely doing what, Daniel?
No, that's absolutely normal. So you're a normal person. So basically, what you just showed your family situation there, which means it tells the audience that you don't have an aluminum hat, tinfoil hat. Run around. Now, I had been accused, Jeff, of having tinfoil underneath my cowboy hat.
I can personally attest that Daniel, on a regular basis at least, does not wear tinfoil under his hat.
Uh-oh. You're exposing me now, man. Now they're going to think different of me. In fact, I thought it was funny, Jeff, you go when I come out there, you go, I thought you was a cowboy. No, when I turn the camera on, it's my alter ego, man. I turn into this, because I am a cowboy. I'm a supernatural cowboy, see?
Yeah.
I don't even know how that is. All right.
Yeah, I get it. What did Forrest Gump say? We got along like peas and carrots when you were out, and it was refreshing that neither one of us had this veil up that we had to try to be somebody else in front of the others. So I feel like I got to know you a little bit too in those hours that you were out taking a look at stuff, and we really appreciated the chance to kind of get to know each other, at least on our end, Daniel. So Kelly and I are just saying thanks for that, and you couldn't have been a more normal guy in regular life. So I don't know how much is persona to the audience and how much isn't. But I mean, you're the same guy on the show as you are in real life, just with a different hat.
Well, there you go. I was wearing my Army hat. But Jeff, we're going to have to talk here. We're going to have to get real serious because I'm going to put a picture in the background.
Okay.
And this picture, I'm going to get out of it. Now, it appears to be a tiki bar. Now, I'm not sure how a tiki bar comes in the picture for survival, but will you please tell us what that means? What's going on there?
Well, first of all, even if it were in a time when we didn't have the grid, morale is going to be key. If all you got to look forward to every day is picking rocks out of the garden and pulling weeds, it's going to get pretty sluggish as far as morale. But the tiki bar down there is at an area where the bigger spring on the property comes out. We try to make it kind of an oasis for everyone to get away from things, and it's a nice cool water spring, and hopefully they'll be able to see that in the pictures that you're showing. And I think I don't want to say you, but I do remember you were asking about it, and in my opinion, anyone that might have an issue with it needs to really consider that Christ's first miracle was turning the casks of water into wine at the wedding reception. And so a little vino every once in a while probably isn't a bad thing. But how does that fit into survival other than morale and a place to rest and refresh yourself? there's not a whole lot of survival down at the tiki bar.
Man, I tell you what, Jeff, that tells me there's going to be a whole lot of morale going on with after a while at the tiki bar. I tell you, I got a picture of me and Susan standing there. It looks like we're talking with you and Atticus, but we're really trying to place an order there, and you're not really giving us nothing there, man.
Oh well,
I wanted I wanted something with a little umbrella, and you said that real men don't use umbrellas in their drinks.
Well, that's true, but the harder it gets, the sweeter I got to have it. So I'm a mixed drink guy myself if it's not right out of a can.
Yeah. Well, what that says is this whole thing is more than just as somebody would say, a survival place. It's a living space, and it's interesting. I have the picture there with me there with Susan, and she basically said it's sort of like the way the conventional sort of community is. People go to church, but she basically said it's the community becomes the church, more or less. You're with like-minded people in that sort of way. I thought that was an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, I love the way she put that. That's right.
But there are people, and wherever there are people, there is trouble. And so it sounds like you've got some scenario. You have something set up there where there would be some things. But I did have a question though. We talk about science fiction movies and as people get older there, Jeff, let's just say somebody gets into the 80s and 90s. Do you have like a tribunal that they just like comes in there and at night they disappear?
Yeah.
I mean, where do they go?
Nature and God are going to figure that out for people when it's their time to go home.
Yeah.
We're not going to do anything to speed that along. We are setting this up in such a way, though, that there are generations to it. We've been fortunate in the people that God have sent us. Some families are older and they don't want to take part in it, and some families are younger and they're bringing their kids because by law they got to go where mom and dad is. And for us to have a good 30%, more or less in that 25 or younger age bracket is going to give us all we need to make sure that the community, years and decades, if that's in the cards, that the world's going to keep turning around, this is going to be a community that will grow. And I like to say, before we started this, it was a very young farm. Kelly and I were a young, not us particularly, or me, well, not me. Now, I can't speak for my wife. I wasn't young when I got married. But we are a young family, and with all the animals being young and new births all the time and so forth, that it's kind of the same thing in the community. The community is young, the buildings are new, the people themselves might be a little older, but they're going to have plenty of life around them, and when it's their time to go home, it's their time. So I don't know if anyone's really worried about getting a pillowcase over their face at night, or the Scalia treatment. But that won't happen here.
Oh, wow. Hey, and I know what that means. It's the Scalia treatment. Yeah, he inadvertently died with a pillow on his face. So,
well, most guys that are hunting the next day do that. They really try to pull that pillow in tight to their airways.
Yeah. So that they kill themselves. Yeah. Or I would like to say being Breitbarted. That's another one that would fit right there. All right. So anyway, so if a person gets older, they're just not going to disappear, and then next week you'll be serving up Soylent Green briskets or something, right?
Yeah. That's I don't know the whole story behind that Soylent Green stuff, but I've yet to hear anything good about it. So
yeah.
But when it comes to what's in the community itself, the spot that we were really focused on when you guys were out was kind of like the doctor's corner down there. There's a retired surgeon, a retired family practice, and a retired anesthesiologist, all within just a couple of lots down there, not to mention my wife and my father-in-law. So, as the community ages, so are we. And, this idea of letting someone keep their I guess the word's eluding me, but let them keep their dignity. That's what I was looking for, and just make their exit in their way. I think when some of the older members get out on the property, though, they're going to regain that youth a little bit because they're back on a farm. They're remembering life the way it was when they were a little boy or a little girl, and they're going to see it with the generations younger than them raising their children and teaching them the value of hard work and life or death decisions. And when you're on a farm and you have animals and plants and everything else, not always does everything survive a hard winter or even predators or things like that. So you're going to learn those life lessons. But, when it's their time to go, there will certainly be a lot of medical attention just here in the community. And that's not to say they're going to get free medical care, but they're definitely going to get community members that care about them keeping their dignity and navigating that part of their life to the fullest.
Mm-hmm. All right, we got a question for you, Jeff, from our live chat. It says, how are the building codes? Are they strict? Do you have codes?
Our building codes are non-existent, but our building standards are strict. So in Crawford County, Missouri, there are no codes on structures in unincorporated Crawford County. So it's up to the general contractor to follow the blueprints that we've come up with. One of our members is an architect from a big architectural school. I don't want to say too much specifically about any one particular member, but when he came out and he took a look, it was a grueling 3 or 4 day interview, him to us and us to him. And at the end of the process, I really wanted to know what he thought about the designs. And basically he said, look, I would just like to know exactly how the guys are building these down to, which way the nails are going into things. He sent me a lot of drawings that he did on his own time after leaving. And the conclusion was that the unit that he picked out was a basic 24 by 24 unit, but he gave us a brilliant idea to increase the space a little bit by using some other materials. And the question was about building codes. Since there are none, our contractor's name is on the line, and so are ours, with Livin right next to the people that we're building for. And I think I told you when you were down, these structures have already seen 4 storms this year, which is it's a lot more than we normally would get. But 4 storms this year, that wind gusts have been over 60, and 1 or 2 of them have been over 70 miles an hour. And I can tell you, since we haven't built for my family yet, if it got to the point that those winds were gusting up any higher, my family knows that our plan is to get in one of those four-wheelers and head down to the new neighborhood and ride the storm out in one of the new buildings. They're so solid.
Yeah, and I personally looked at those buildings, and they're on a slab, and I looked at the spacings of the 2x4s. I didn't see anything that was substandard whatsoever. In fact, I even noted some places where 2x4s were in multiples, say the headers. And they're very well done. And the fact is they are affordable. And the fact that the national average for a square foot is $123 a square foot. And I think you got it down to around 50.
That's correct. I mean, we're missing a couple of things, but by the time the typical build, our average build gets done, the customer is at about $60 a square foot. I think it's $60.77 a square foot for a house ready to be delivered, fully hooked up with electric, water, and sewer. And that's even them having us do a little bit with paint on the walls and sometimes flooring and even appliances down to the air conditioner, the heating unit.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. Here's a question for you. It says, would it be okay to build your own underground shelter? But you're building the shelter there, aren't you?
Yeah, that's true. And I can tell you that several of the members, because it's just hills everywhere. Right now, out of the 30 some odd builds that we're committed to, 4 of them have full basements. And so when you talk about building your own shelter, I mean, it depends what we're sheltering from. A typical storm is one thing, tornadoes another, and then Planet X is a whole nother thing. So, I can go over design specifications for each one of these individually with people that if they're considering what they're sheltering themselves from. But on the personal side, out of those 4, they span the entire range of the map, from cosmetic to utilitarian. So, your question about can they build their own shelter, once we've got a package sold and it's their land and the house is going up, as long as we've got this thing designed in, we can, if it can be designed, we can build it.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So these aren't just necessarily cookie cutters. You have multiple plans and multiple variations depend on. So really, it's not. Again, it didn't seem like it's. As I said earlier, as the police said in London, it's not a run and hide place. It's a community that's being built with a purpose. Now, here, say in our area, in Indianapolis area, and areas across the country, communities are normally built by a construction firm. Then they'll call it by their construction firm. They'll say it's another community by so and so constructors, but there's no purpose in that, and then the people in general in those communities don't know their neighbors. There's no intention to know their neighbors. It's just a place to live. So this is actually a place to live designed for people to know their neighbors, not only to know their neighbors, but to work with their neighbors, and that's so interesting.
Yeah, and everybody is kind of asking me, well, what types of people are in the community? Because, of course, to hear that we've got so many doctors and nurses and, people with medical background, that's great. But, I mean, if we were going to go down the full gamut of things, we have scientists. And, I mean, we have several scientists. We have ex-military in this. And one of the most interesting things was that very early on in the project, we got our first member that had a child that was still in that age range where they would need more education just to get to a high school education. And I mentioned over the phone to that person, I'm sorry, not over the phone. I mean, I said it to him over the phone, but then when they were here, I said it to him in person, again, that, now that it was official, we need our teacher. And the very next phone call was a lovely couple from Florida, and she came to us with 26 years of educational background and in education. And God's just kind of worked with that the whole way through. If we need it, He provides it. And that's why I feel like, this little thing being called the Miracle in Missouri, it's not one great big miracle that stands out. It's not a plane crash where everybody survived and it's all over the national headlines. It is literally 100 people that have 100 stories that these hundreds of miracles add up, and there's just no way this puts together if it wasn't guided by the hand of God. Mm-hmm. So, I forget what the original question was, Daniel, but it's more or less about the skill set of the people in the answer.
Well, that's interesting. You seem to have an eclectic variance of people with various experiences to make a sort of an all-inclusive community there. But it's also, as I looked at over the prices, they are actually affordable. As I said, you've managed to get the price down, and really because, and I would assume some part of that is that while you should make a profit, you obviously you're in some points there's obviously capitalism and you're entrepreneur for whether you started out that way or not, but it's okay because this is America, so you should actually make a profit. But the prices are down to where somebody would know instinctively that it isn't just a profit-making endeavor, though you should make a profit and you have a right to, and I would expect that. But it has also been made affordable for a vast swath of people, so it's not like a billionaire's personal gated 300-acre community. In fact, speaking about the acreage, those that move there, though the plots are in the 90 to 60 times 60 realm and some larger than that, there's also the hundreds of acres that surround that, which would be perceived as somebody living there as part of theirs. They would look at that as they walk through the forest there. Hey, there's a branch falling down, so I'm going to move the branch, because they're going to take ownership more or less by virtue of being there. It's their forest, so they could feel like the entire perimeter. They have a vast amount of land that they don't necessarily have to have. They don't have to pay taxes on it. They don't have to maintain it because there's other people in there helping them maintain it as well.
Well, that's true, and it'll be neat to see how this all works out when we're fully sold. And everyone's there on a full-time basis. It's going to be there, and the people come in to visit that are setting this up as a retreat. But I kind of expect that everybody's going to find their own beautiful little place, and they're all over the property. And so, if you just kind of figure that there's an average coverage of about an acre per person, you start adding up, if you got 300 acres and 300 people, and those 300 people are actually going to be in subdivision type lots, wooded lots spread out in several different phases, that everyone's backyard is going to be 200 and something acres. And so finding a little place that's your own where you can go and get that peace and tranquility and, do your kata or whatever you want to do at sunrise, there's not going to be an issue with running out of space to call your own on the greater part of the homestead. But,
Jeff,
like I said, until we've got everybody there and watching this community evolve into what it is a working, a living community with the members that are there and the dynamics of that, it's just kind of guesswork. But I know from being on the property as long as I have that if you're willing to look, you're going to see new things every day for a long, long time.
While you are providing the framework for this community and you've got various people that help you there, it sounds like what you're saying in general is those that move there have to have a sort of similar outlook of, say, helping one's neighbor, protecting other people's stuff, looking after other people's area, just kind of even the children that would be there, looking after them, making sure that even if they're not your kids, that they're not, climbing a tree and, putting themselves in a dangerous situation. So what you're saying is that the people there almost, or you're counting on them to sort of gel into creating the kind of society that they want. It's not necessarily what you want, because as you said, you're not really sure how that's going to turn out, because really what's happening is you're counting on the people moving there to really create it. You're just providing a general framework and a little guidance, sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, I want this to be as free as freedom can afford us at this point. And, if that day does come that the whole thing collapses, then it will be up to us in many ways. We'll be on our own. And I can't say that we couldn't be happier. I mean, right now it's certainly livable, and you turn the air conditioner on and you get nice and comfortable on those hot, humid days. But if it all does go away, the people that are in this community, the easiest way to put it is that I look for everyone to pass the babysitter test. If I can't trust a member to babysit my own children, I don't know how much other members are going to be able to trust them with theirs. So, I don't have everything in stone to where, there's not a feeling that doesn't come into this process. There certainly is, but that's as succinctly as I can put it. That if you can think of the most kind-hearted, helpful people that you've ever met, those are the people that we're looking for to fill these remaining slots in this first community.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have a question from Philip in Georgia from our Fast Blast. Says, have you studied the Pilgrims and their successes and failures? Did you do research on that?
Absolutely. I love the story of the Pilgrims. Those that don't know, and Daniel, you're a student of history, it's a perfect framework for a lesson on capitalism. When they set up their society and they were mostly socialistic, that's what they left, and so that's what they knew to create here, that nobody wanted to do more to produce. There was no incentive when all of the bounty from the harvest went into one central location. So whether you worked a little or worked a lot, you were going to get the same allotment as anyone else. Mm-hmm. And so they almost starved to death. And because they wanted freedom more than they wanted the handouts, they didn't go back to the crown and beg forgiveness. Mm-hmm. They said, what we're going to do is we're going to set up a system of each man to his own. And that first year that they did that, became the story behind the first Thanksgiving, where they invited the Indians to share tips in agriculture and local geography. And it worked out well for that with setting up a country. And so I think that's a good foundation for what we're doing, too. Mm-hmm.
Well, Jeff, listen, I am a cowboy. I mean, that's obvious right there. I got a horseshoe plaque to prove it. In fact, I'm going to put that up right now. Somebody sent me a horseshoe plaque with my name on it. Awesome thing. But when it comes to cows, and I know they got this thing called an udder. I don't know if I want to reach underneath there and start pulling on that thing, man. It almost seems a little gay. I mean, I don't know what that thing is, but you just start pulling on it. I mean, what if I don't want to do that? Could I get another job? Can you give me another job, man?
Well, sure. I mean, let's just take the scenario that society is no longer there, and we can't go to the grocery store to get our milk, and so we have to take that milk cow that you saw and the other 7 that you didn't, and we've got to use them to produce dairy products. Now, we have some people that are already members that are complete vegans, and so they've got to supplement that protein with plant protein. But, dairy is such a bountiful thing where you can get cheese and cream and butter and, just milk and all kinds of other things if you're willing to work it, that there's going to be so much to do if the grid goes down, Daniel, that, let's say that there's someone that doesn't mind milking cows, but what they really hate doing is carpentry work. So, judging by your physical stature, I don't think that you're someone that looks like they're shy of a hard day's work, and so I'm sure that there'll be plenty of people willing to trade off that job, one way or another, because there will be so many things meant to do when you just, can't go to the store and get everything you need from a loaf of bread to a roll of Scotch tape. I mean, if it all goes down, we're pretty much on our own to produce these things.
Hey, our moderator Jade in the live chat, she says she's pulled them udders. But I mean, no. What do? You pull them, and then when you squeeze them, then they like spray out milk into a bucket.
Well, yeah. Honestly, it's you got to get yourself around the fact that you are where you are and you're doing what you're doing. I mean, it is a dirty job at times, and cows are cows, and whatever that cow needs to do, whether you're pulling on the udders, they're going to do. And so you kind of have to put that prissiness aside for the greater good of the benefits of doing that job.
Jeff, listen, man. Do those cows like that?
Well, it releases a hormone. I mean, any woman that's nursed can tell you that it's actually quite peaceful. And with the cows, if you do it right, it's the same thing. I mean, it's a form of massage, and it releases a hormone in them that calms them down. So once you get them in there and you get them calm and they're chewing away at a little bit of sweet feed or some good hay or something like that, they're going to take their mind off of it, because it's going to feel just the same as when they were nursing their calf to them if you're not rough on them. But yeah, it's a pull and squeeze. It's one motion. You're pulling and squeezing that thing, and it takes a while. But Daniel, they have these beautiful devices now. They're rechargeable milkers.
Right on.
So, yeah, you can plug these things in while you can still get electricity and charge the battery pack up, and you hook the 4 little suction cups up after you do the little iodine, make sure everything's clean, and a couple minutes later, you've got a bucket full of milk.
Okay. Hey, Jeff, we're right here at the top of the hour. We take a 5-minute break. If you'd like to say something about your website or how people can get more information, then we'll come back with you in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, real simple. Just myozarkhomestead.com, and there's even an FAQ page on there if people have more in-depth questions. I think about the top 30 or 40 questions are answered on there. So it's myozarkhomestead.com.
Okay. Just stay on the line there if you can, and I'll turn you down. We'll be back with you in 5 minutes.
Sounds great.
All right, everybody, you're watching and/or listening to the Edge Television broadcast tonight. We have all the way from the Missouri Ozarks, Jeff Harness of the Missouri Ozark Project. If you have missed any of the first hour, you begin to replay in our main player. We'll podcast it, put it in our YouTube video channel, and put it in our TuneIn radio platform as well, broadcasting 24 hours a day. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
out, that will give us the information that we need to run the background check. As long as you pass the background check, you'll be contacted by someone, and that's your opportunity to make those last minute questions and decisions that you need. And hopefully the next step after that is setting up an appointment and coming out and seeing the place.
Okay, and then we have this question here. What type of utilities do you have now?
As far as if that was the whole question, I'm assuming they're just talking about electric, water, and sewer. So I mean, it's your typical neighborhood. As long as the grid's up, the water comes out of the faucet, the what goes down the toilet, and you plug it in and turn it on. So
okay. So we have a toilet removal system in place.
Toilet removal system.
Hey, let me ask you something. Do you guys have? Do you guys give out free squatty potties? Do you know what that is?
I guess I don't.
Yeah, well, there you go. I know you're living out in the woods, so you might not know, Jeff. Okay, so squatty potty is a lot of people have these. Okay, you wouldn't think people would buy them, but what they do is it's a plastic piece you put underneath your toilet, and you put your feet on it. And they say that it corrects the angle there, and it makes. Anyway, let's move on from that.
Okay.
Well, anyway, that was Kathy Griffin's one of her main sponsors.
Okay.
Do you know who Kathy Griffin is?
I do know who Kathy Griffin is.
Yeah.
She doesn't know us, but
yes.
That's okay.
Well,
she's not exactly our kind of people.
Right. All I can say is Squatty Potty dumped her, and that's a play on words right there. Okay, but here's the main thing, and I can guarantee that a lot of people that are watching this program want to know, what about the internet, man? I mean, a lot of people want to live in the woods, but they're still going to want their internet, Jeff.
Well, we've got fiber optic about a half mile from where the project is now. And so when we have occupation happening here in the middle of the month, and we start to turn on more and more of the houses, that's when people can move in. And it won't be too long before our local telecom company says, well, we've got so many people out there, and if it's only a half mile, we'll go ahead and run the fiber optic over to them and become a priority. But until that time, we have DSL, and that DSL can be throttled up as much as you want to pay for. But the 1.5 download speed that we have is enough to run a Roku TV, and they're setting it up at the same time as the electricity, and they're setting up enough hardware that they can expand this system as the community grows. So they're well aware of the numbers that we're expecting, and they're designing the system as such. Mm-hmm.
All right. What about grid down? Do you have a plan in place for water access with grid down?
Oh, absolutely. When you take a look at the scenario of exactly what life is going to be if there is no turn the switch on and the stuff runs. If we're grid down in every way, and we have to go back to that pioneering spirit, we have on the property that we have now, we have two very substantial springs, and we have a couple of supplemental springs that we really can't count on year round. I mean, they're recharged with with the heavy rains, and so it makes for some pretty areas. But kind of like that one that I showed you with the waterfall. Mm-hmm. But if it's just normal times, and we've got to get this water, that's one of the reasons why we're putting in the lakes as substantially sized as they are. Because if you have a big fresh body of water like that close, you don't have to walk a half mile to get down to the spring and then, come back up with 40 pounds of water strapped on each side of a yoke. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take a little bit of filtering in that stage. But let's say the lake's not up and the grid goes down here sometime soon, that it just hasn't had time to fill up. Mm-hmm. Then the spring that's in the property that's most central to all of the different places where we would have people living, at most, if you're from one end to the other, you'd be walking a half mile to get fresh water. And then, of course, I wouldn't suggest that anybody drink it right out of the spring, although that has been done several times. It's terrific water, but you run the risk of getting that surface bacteria and if there's anything in it. So a little boiling, a little filtering, and you've got all the fresh water that you need. And if that's not enough, a third of a mile off of the property is a very substantial spring-fed creek that's really the size of some of the rivers that I've seen, and that I've seen,
Yeah.
I'm getting a little feedback
Yeah.
here. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, but there's plenty of water around, and if we're grid down, we're going to have all the ingredients we need to sustain life.
Mm-hmm. All right. And what about security plan should the grid go down?
Sure, and hopefully we've got enough time before an event like that happens. Nobody knows, and because of that, when people have started to move in, and we have enough members, we've got enough retired military that have the specific skill sets that we're looking for to help train our members tactically. So there's going to be a lot of professional training that goes on. We've got a gentleman specifically lined out to put together our tactical plan. But like any good plan, the more simple it is, the harder it's going to be to mess up. And so basically with our land, you've got a huge perimeter. But if you've got a good number of people, enough to pool a third of them from it, that, as long as nobody's pressing that line, that third of the members that are going to be, working security 24 hours a day, there won't be a foot of the property line that won't be under someone's sight, in their line of sight 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. So that's the first line of defense is to make sure that there's a good and stable plan. And, that's a simple enough plan. And anything that's more intricate than that, if people want to come and meet us in person, we'll get into the details, but that should suffice for now.
All right. I have in the background, the specification for the bunker. How many people can that fit? Are you planning on having a bunker for each of your additions there? One, 2, and 3, or is it going to be one big one?
Yeah, one of the things about becoming a member is that's included. It's a one-time fee, and that goes towards, building and appointing out space within a fortified underground shelter with all the appointments. It may not be posh, but we're looking at a total of providing nearly 80 square feet per person, and so the plans on the bunker have sort of evolved over time. And although that larger bunker that you've got the plans up for, that's great. For a couple of reasons, it's worked out in our favor to go with a bunker that has a smaller footprint but more square footage, and that allows more square footage per person. But it also allows for the bunker to be stronger and put more of them up, so we can have 4 or 5 of these smaller bunkers throughout the property that are 40 to 60 people. In these bunkers, instead of having 200 people all in one bunker and only 30 square feet per person. I mean, that's as tight as a submarine, and anyone that's spent time on a submarine, it's not the easiest place to be in long term. So that's kind of the holy grail is, number one, it's got to be built strong with good life support systems. But once you've got that tackled, the more square footage you can eke out, per person in there, the easier it's going to be to go long term. So we're kind of fortunate in that aspect.
What is the purpose of the bunker, Jeff? Is it for an EMP pulse? Is it because the houses have been wiped out? Why? How do you see people going in there? For what reason?
Well, I mean, we're in a place where it's very hard for a tornado to touch down and just get across. I mean, there's too many hills. So up and down the hill, the funnel actually making contact with the ground. It's just not something that would happen on a regular basis. It's not to say that it can't happen, but, in normal times, if you were going to get a very high windstorm and we have enough warning, that it would be easy to say, hey, listen, you hear this sound, you go to the bunker, and it's, it's not the end of all things. It's just a normal event. Mm-hmm. But in the case that this is the scenario that none of us can really quantify with how bad things are going to get, that bunker is really, we designed this for the things that we can't really get our head around in that maybe if it gets that bad, that life isn't going to be what we remember it if we ever have to open that bunker door, but at least we're going to give ourselves a chance to survive to the point that we are going to get to open the bunker door and start over.
Would you open that bunker door in the case of a tornado?
Well, I mean, if we got to go in the bunker, and it's just a tornado, then you're talking about you're only in there for minutes and not months. And would we let people in for a tornado? Absolutely. Those are things that with the radar that they have now, that you've got plenty of warning, and then you'd only need to be in them for a couple of minutes. So I mean, that's absolutely something that we want to make sure that people have access to, because this is about safety and security as much as anything else, if not more.
Now, that is something that no other community offers. Now, I've heard people obviously have tornado shelters, specifically out in Tornado Row in Oklahoma, and I'm sure other places. But I don't know where there is a specific community, I guess, shelter. I mean, it's, in small towns, I say they would go to a school or something. But that's if you can make it. It seems kind of handy.
Yeah.
It seems kind of handy to have a fully stocked shelter right there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to make light of it, but we're close enough to Joplin, Missouri, that I went through it after the big tornado, but not before they rebuilt most of the town. But that tornado came in the middle of the night, and there was only a little bit of hail and very little warning in front of it, and the amount of just sheer carnage from an event like that in the short period of time that people had to take shelter is just kind of horrifying when stuff like that happens. That it's nice to be on a property that within less of a quarter mile, the walk around the track around a football field, that you have access to this thing that could possibly save your life, and for more than just a tornado. So yeah, it's kind of a nice feature to have along with membership, sure.
Yeah, that sounds like a nice feature. Phil from Georgia back with another question. So how many permanent residents are on the property?
Well, right now, until we have the water and the sewer hooked up to each one of the residences, those residences can't be occupied. And it's basically a state law that if you have a toilet, that toilet has to be hooked up before a person can be in the house. So you can have a hunting cabin, and you can go and be in and out of that hunting cabin as a transitory occupation, a couple days here, a couple days there, but you don't live there full time. So we're literally, for us, the 15th of June is when we're going to be ready to have our first members there. And the way that these are selling, about half the people will be here full time, and the other half, this will be a destination for them.
All right. Our moderator, Jade, asked a question. If you wanted a well on the property, how deep is the water table?
Well, the deeper you go, the clearer the water. So the wells that we're putting together for the community are 400 to 425 feet. And this is a process that's evolved from the start to now, and that's because they are so substantial. These homes aren't hunting cabins. They have full electricity. Some of them are big enough that they've got 200 amp service, and just like you'd have in a fairly substantial modern home. And because of this, we weren't able to use the regulations that the State Department of Natural Resources regulates campgrounds on. Those are seen as transitory hookups. So we have to have a fully installed system where these wells can't feed off of something shallow just because they can't run the risk of running dry. So they got to be a little bit deeper. Now, if someone that wanted to put a personal well on their property, it's going to be their property. They can do whatever they want with it. And if putting a well on it's something that you want to do, I've heard of people around here having wells that are as shallow as 50 feet, but being married to a woman that's the quote unquote town doctor, is the nurse practitioner. There's no way in the world I'd feed my family water that was any more shallow than 250 feet.
All right. So it sounds like you have a whole lot of thinking going into this. So when are you going to start with phase 2 or phase 3? When does that come online?
Well, until we have phase one completely finished, we're not going to take our building crew and split them in half onto another phase. So our plan was always by the end of July. It's just that when people come out and they see that this is real and this isn't some guy's idea out on the internet, the plans are getting bigger. and that's very fulfilling as the guy that started this whole thing. But at the same time, it's also another, it's something else that we have to work through is that the plans are bigger. Yeah. So the workers are taking a little bit longer in each house. So we're hiring more workers, and hopefully we can finish up phase one at the end of July. But if we don't, it will be, sometime as soon as we can in August that we move over to actually breaking ground and construction of the actual homes. Now, the infrastructure is being worked on as we speak, but until phase one is finished, all those people that were brave enough to be first, we feel that they need to be rewarded, and then we start the second phase.
It does sound like a very large vision, and it certainly seems like you're breaking new ground. You had a video crew come out there and do a documentary.
Yeah.
When is that going to?
Yeah.
Where do you think that's going to be rolled out at?
Well, I don't want to. I don't want to kind of let the cat out of the bag. The one thing that I can tell you is that there are a bunch of smaller clips that they're putting together, and those will appear in different places throughout the internet. So you can go to our website sometime later on in the month of June, and I believe there's going to be a media page for that. And it's gotten to the point where it's so much bigger than I ever dreamt that something like this would get. I mean, this was just one guy trying to keep his family safe. That I had no idea that other people, and I've been told so many times that they wanted to start something like this, they just didn't know how. And, having done it, Daniel, I don't suggest anyone quit their day job and try this. If it wasn't for the wife that I've got, I would have been divorced a long time ago.
Wow.
But
hey, can you, do you feel comfortable to share the story you told me about your 48-hour mandate?
Oh, well, sure, yeah. So this, let's see how quick I can do this. So for about 2 years, this started in 2012, and it was about currency and the collapse of fiat currency. And so like everyone else, that was my kickstart, so that's how I started to become more and more aware of all these other tangential things. And, the more I looked on YouTube for currency collapse or financial crisis and all this stuff, the more these stories popped up. So this went on for 2 years. and our income was based off of mine and hers. And so the more of my income that I started to trade away for more time looking up articles and videos and everything else, the more it wore on my wife to the point that we had to do something about it. And so when we decided that we were going to move forward with preparing our family, it didn't take us long to get into the position to realize, well, we can show other families how to do this quickly because it really doesn't take much. If you're willing to give up a few things, it's really pretty easy. And then you start putting the nuts and bolts together and how to do it on a budget, and it became clear that since we weren't going to get our family involved in doing this for themselves, that if we were going to do it for them, we might as well open it up for other people as well. And, excuse me, and we started, but I fell flat on my face, and we made it too inexpensive, too cheap, too Spartan, too hillbilly. And people wanted more. And so my wife had gone for a total of 4 years at this point of watching me give away more and more of our income to put this together to an audience of people that may or may not come. And with seeing what she saw, she just couldn't understand why I would want to take more time away from making money and make this plan stronger and do it for people that we don't know if they'll come or not, but let's see if we can build it bigger and still keep a good budget and make it so every man could afford this. And this was 6 weeks of doing legal and work with the different administrative agencies in the state to make sure that we had everybody's blessing moving forward. And she just was fit to be tied and couldn't understand where this was going. And it all came to a head one night, and there was an argument, and I had my hand on the door. I was about to walk out, and I just something in me said that I had to fix this at home before I could fix it for someone else's home.
Okay.
And so we had a long discussion. At the end of that discussion, I said, I don't know where this comes from, but I need 48 hours. And I told her from the heart, where this was, that I felt this. And as a whim, she figured she needed to give me 2 more days, and then we'd be back to regular life. So at the end of this, she says, well, you got 2 days. And if it weren't for those 2 days, I'd have never been able to go public with this, and I would have gone back to my old day job and been none the wiser. But for good or bad, she gave me the 2 days, and here's where we are.
Okay, so you obviously succeeded in the 2 days.
Yeah.
Because you're still here, you're still here, you're still married. So hey.
Yeah. So the end of that story is I begged the guy to do an internet show. I love him to death for taking a gamble and believing that what I was telling him was true, even though it sounded fantastic that I was, literally going to do this if people came. But that was a Thursday night that we wrapped it up, and it was well after midnight. So it was about 3 o'clock in the morning that I got home. I rolled into bed. I was so tired I turned my phone off. The next morning I get up. I had been up for 2 days straight. I was just exhausted. I go into the office. I turned the computer on, I turned the phone on, all of a sudden everything started blinging, that you got a text message, you missed a voicemail, the computer says the emails are there, and my eyes just got as big as silver dollars, Daniel. People were begging me to accept deposits before anybody else came so they could secure a spot in this. And when I told her that it had happened, she just couldn't believe it. And so I had to go over to her clinic at lunchtime and show her on my phone, but the phone wouldn't quit ringing long enough for me to even show her the voicemail. So if it wasn't for that 2 days, none of this would have been possible. And so I got to thank her for allowing that. But, those of us that have a good mate in life, we all know that we're stronger together than we are separately. And it's certainly true in my case. But that's the story about the 48 hours.
Wow. It kind of reminds me of a biblical story where there were time events. There were times that God had to come through, and it seems like he does always come through, and you can almost count on him. So, but getting back to earlier in the first hour, Jeff, when you said you was hoping that this community is chosen or favored. Have others tried to do this and failed because maybe perhaps they haven't had the divine intervention?
Well, I can't speak to why someone wouldn't be able to put one of these together, other than there are so many moving parts. It's not just building a house, because if it were building a house, all you would need is the money, and you could build a house and you could do it on a resort. They do it all the time. And that's what people look for. There's going to be a lake and recreation areas and in the wilderness and pretty houses and landscaping. That any builder on the block can do with the right set of plans and the right acreage. But for people that you want to be neighbors with, my job is in a sense, that gatekeeper to make sure that those neighbors that everybody has, my neighbors, their neighbors, we're all neighbors together, are the ones that were supposed to be here. And so there's a special thing that happens when a person is taking a tour on the property. And, I think I said this in our first show, but now it's tenfold, that I could literally talk. If I was working an 8-hour day, I'm sure I got a month of stories of how people were sent here for one reason or another, how they fumbled across it when they weren't even looking for it. And when they get on the property, finding the lot and the house and all this stuff, that's fairly simple. And it's great, and I'm glad that the project moves forward, but I'm always more anticipating finding out why God brought this person to our front door. And, having talked with hundreds of people, I've got so many of these stories that there is divine intervention in this. And that's not to say that it can't fail, but, through him all things are possible. And so every day and everything that I do, except for the cussing, which happens on a construction site, I try to do it in God's name and try to figure out what he wants me to do next. And it's kind of tough to keep up with his pace, but we just keep trying to raise our game. But honestly, Daniel, if it weren't for those stories of this miraculousness that happens before people even get to the property, that it would be impossible to work these hours. But you will have to stop me because I'll go on and on and on about.
Well, let me ask him. You addressed it sort of in a way, but I want to crank it down just a little bit. A lot of people that I know, they have a trailer, say in a campground in Florida they go to, or they have a second home or a winter home, or this home or that home. Could this home be considered for those folks that type of thing? Almost like a vacation
second home?
Yeah, like a vacation home.
Well, sure. There is. We're hooked up with a fantastic financial guy, and there is a way to use IRAs and 401ks and all kinds of stuff. And there are some certain regulations that I don't want to go into. That's not my forte. I just know that it's possible that the money that people have been saving up for, there's a way for them to use the laws that the lawmakers put out there for themselves to buy vacation properties. There's just certain restrictions on how much you can live there and how much of what you have you can spend and so forth. But I know that it's fairly lenient. Once you get inside that door, this world opens up, and you don't pay the penalties or the taxes if you do it the right way. And a second home, like I said, about half the people in this are using this as a second home. And because it's real estate, it counts as an investment as well. So there's all kinds of benefits with that. But yes, it's second home for sure for about half the people that we have.
We have this question from Canada. It said, how would he start up and attract people from Saskatchewan, which has a 3-month growing season and long spells below 30 degrees below? I'm not sure I asked that question right or they wrote it right, but what's the geographics of the people? Some of the people. What's the furthest people have come to invest in homes down in the Ozarks there?
Well, it's going to be tough for someone to beat Sweden, but we have members or potential members looking from Switzerland and Australia. And in the case of the man in Switzerland, if I tell you his accomplishments, you'll know exactly who he is. When he gets here, if he wants to tell people that's great, but he's a very famous person, but because of the real estate that his family owns, and when he's allowed to sell it, he can't move here until I think late September, early October. And with all of our calendars, that's going to be a real interesting time if things play out the way that we're told they will. But with doing this and with doing this for people in other countries, we don't have any geographic restrictions as much as the people from other countries do. So it's up to them if this is too far or not. But in northern Canada, Daniel, greenhouses, I can't tell you, earth ships, that type of thing where you can use the geothermal is about the only thing that's going to extend growing seasons. It's only going to extend it so much because once you lose that energy on the surface that the sun provides, like we're in, honey, are we in zone 4 or zone 5? I forget sometimes. Oh, we're in 6. Okay, so we're in zone 6. So we've got pretty good sun throughout the year, but there are only certain things that you can grow if you're not getting the energy from the sun. And in northern Canada, I haven't looked at those specifics with the amount of surface energy, but that's something that they would have to educate themselves if they were looking at doing it up there, or make it easy on themselves and just come on down here. We already have a member from Canada.
All right, so you got somebody there from Canada. What I think you also said you got somebody from Colorado, and where else?
Oh, good grief. Washington State, California, Utah, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, Kansas, Nebraska, Texas, Minnesota, Michigan, and I'm not just trying to name off all the states. I'm trying to go west to east now. Illinois, New York, Maine, several from Florida. The people in Florida are a little different in that the range of scenarios are all kind of based around Florida being fairly low elevation and with a large body of water on both their east and west flank. Let's see, Virginia. So I could kind of stutter here a little bit with going through some of the others, but I haven't put a pin in the map yet, but I would be pretty sure that we've probably got close to half the states covered just here in the United States where members are originally from.
Hey, I think you answered this question on the last show, but this viewer here is asked it, so let's go ahead and take this question. It says, what if somebody needs to work? There's a couple small towns around there, I think.
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm not foreign to the long commute, and where we're from, there are a lot of people that didn't get anything more than a high school education and had a relative that worked in one of the automotive plants in St. Louis. And so for some of those people, they would commute nearly 2 hours each way every day for a good job. So if a person's willing to commute at least an hour, there are several bigger towns around, and you'll be in the outskirts of St. Louis. If you want to be downtown St. Louis, in 90 minutes you're there. Mm-hmm. So if you're not worried about a commute, there's all kinds of work. Now, on the homestead itself, there aren't a whole lot of paying positions. When you sell at $50 a square foot to start off with, there's just not a lot of profit to hire a lot of staff.
Well, the other thing is though, the investment is so low that, from what I understand, when you have doctors coming there, obviously they're coming from well-to-do areas, and it looks like they're downsizing. They're getting back to more a basic level of existence that's not surrounding them with things and stuff, because those houses don't allow that. So once you get to that point, then the necessity of a large income, well-paying job isn't so much.
Well, you're right.
Where you live in a big town like I live in, you got to have a $75,000 a year job. But if you have a mortgage, say on the order that it costs to get into the Ozark community, you don't need that kind of money, and you might actually get a job you actually like in a small town.
Yeah. Well, we would hope. Let's take a young couple, for instance. 384 square feet's not much, but when most of your life is going to be outside the back door, it's not going to be like you're cramped in a tiny apartment and you can never go outside and play and do things. So if you take a look at, you could own this for less than the cost of a new SUV, then, if a person's got a way to come up with the finances, whether it's money that they've saved up or whether it's, getting a signature loan, a personal loan, things like that. We just can't do FHA loans. And no bank's going to lend to us right now because they're not going to risk their FDIC insurance. But the reason that we've made that trade-off is to get federal funding, to get FDIC insurance, we got to let anybody buy that's got the means to afford it. Mm-hmm. And that could mean the wrong type of element in this if we can't control who's a member and who's not.
Right.
So if you keep that investment low, even if it's a signature note, if that's your mortgage, you could pay this thing off in 5 years for less than a car note, and you own your home, something that goes up in value, but you also have access to your own groceries. So with a little additional time, you're not spending, your car note, your house note, your grocery bill, your insurance bill, everything else. You're right, you've downsized. But if you own it and you don't have that house note and you're growing, let's just say half of your own groceries, how much of your life do you get freed up financially because you don't have those burdens that you're working through the system for 30 years?
Right, that's it too. It's not only a location change, it's a lifestyle change. And I like what you said. When you walk outside, you have 200 acres. So, that you don't have to own a tractor and, you don't have to, raise a herd of cows and you have to do all these things that a typical person with 200 acres would have. But it is a lifestyle change. You have your things in the house to exist, but the life is more on the outside and more back to nature. And interesting, one of the things I thought I saw on your website says, living the way God intended. And I want to ask you about that. How do you see the life that God intended us to live?
Okay. My interpretation of that is not poisoning the earth, not poisoning ourselves. I mean, I have my vices. A lot of people do. We're certainly not going to throw stones. I smoke cigars, and I do it because I enjoy it. And if I didn't enjoy it so much, I wouldn't do it. And so I'm not going to take someone that likes to have a beer or two every night with dinner or not, and judge them. Now if someone becomes a problem to other people because they're habitual in their habits, let's say chewing tobacco, and they're always sitting in the common grounds, and it's all over the ground, and the kids are playing with their bare feet, and it's getting all over them, then we have to say something. We have to find a way to work around. But as God intended, I think that meant being good stewards of the land that he gave us, good stewards of the life that he gave us. And so things like abortion being okay, that's not okay here. We're not going to take the most innocent of us and destroy that before protecting the life that was given. And it's not about the neighbors who have a kid that's got $250 tennis shoes, and now my kid wants $250 tennis shoes, but it's somewhere in between that and my kid is wearing shoe boxes because we can't afford shoes. This is not about material things as much as it is about our relationship with Christ and our relationship with our neighbors, and building a solid community that cares about each other, not necessarily for each other, but cares about each other. And when times are down, people will pitch in and vice versa. But it's more about what we were given in just our place in time with being God's children than it is being a rat in the race and let me get mine and as much of it as I can get, and damn the consequences. And so hopefully this is the life that people envision when they think of that Norman Rockwell-esque community. I mean, there are going to be plenty of moments where the tensions are raised because someone's plumbing gets clogged up and it needs to get fixed, and it's hot and the electricity went out, or these aren't normal things. They happen in your home where you are now, and so people are people, and even the best of us have a temper flare up every once in a while. I mean, I couldn't love my wife anymore, and yet we still get into arguments every once in a while, but we work through them. And that's what this is about, that we just don't throw away things and we're on to the next best thing. I mean, we make commitments to each other, and we're going to see them through.
Mm. Would you see that as any part of the fulfillment where Jesus said, love thy neighbor as thyself? Is this an opportunity for that to be meted out in real life?
That's why I love you, Daniel. You remind me of what's really important. If and I know what the saying that you're referring to, and absolutely, I mean, that wasn't one of the tenets so much in that. That's exactly why it was set up. But, the Ten Commandments have worked for thousands of years, and so why throw those out? So if Christ himself said it, it seems to be a pretty good rule to follow.
Well, that sounds like an opportunity to do that. I have neighbors, but they're kind of at a distance, so I can't. That really doesn't come out like that. But it does sound like a plan. I mean, you're on the cutting edge. It is a society that is sort of looks like it's birthed out of your experiences and sort of a divine maybe interaction there, or at least leading there, and maybe. It will be as successful as you think, and maybe it won't be as successful as you think. It has to do with the people and the commitment of the people there. And so really, as I said the first hour, it seems like it's requiring people to love thy neighbor, to be a part, and to as you have children around there. So yeah, that's interesting. Living a life that God intended. And I can pretty much tell you, as you mentioned, the sort of the rat race and the envy that goes on. Those houses aren't the envy of building, the 2-story house and filled with stuff. And as I drive around my neighborhoods, you drive by and there's a garage. It's completely packed full of stuff, and their house inside their house looks exactly like that. It's packed full of stuff. So this gives people the opportunity to divest. In fact, a very good friend of mine said they just went last week. Told me they went and went in their closet and started pulling things out. And they said when they got done, they enjoyed it so much that they felt like a weight was lifted. So and stuff has a tendency to weigh us down, and we can't take a single thing with us. So why not live a life of loving each other, laying down our lives for others as Christ intended, as he did for us? That's the example. But I don't see anywhere where Jesus said, accumulate thy stuff, maintain thy stuff, get more stuff, and insure that damn stuff. I don't think he's ever said that.
No, and we look at it simply, and here you own your lifestyle. There, your lifestyle owns you. And so you're absolutely right that, maybe the houses aren't mansions. Some of them are very substantial, and on the insides, they beg to differ. But from the outside, we're building strong but simple. And that's how we keep the price down for the basic package. But, what you said is absolutely true. Your lifestyle doesn't own you here.
Yeah, and that's it. It's a rebuffing of the culture. It's anti-culture. And I think most people can look around and say, culture right now sucks. Can I say that? Is that would that get me thrown out of the community?
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean,
if I have a naughty word.
That above anything. Forget about, financial collapse all the way to the rise of the Antichrist. I mean, let's just put that aside for a moment. The one thing that you can take here is that the life outside, the society, the way things are going, I don't see those getting better, even if none of these other scenarios come to pass, 5 years, 10 years down the line. It seems like it's a slope that we're on that we're not going to recover from. Mm-hmm. So we're going to roll the clock back, and we're going to get back to a little simpler life where you do care about the people that you live next to.
Mm-hmm. Quick question as we get ready to end here. Do any of the houses have fireplaces, or can people get fireplaces?
Well, they can get fireplaces. We sort of had some plans to maybe put some in, and people have changed their mind on that, and that's okay. But someone can get a fireplace if they want, but the wood-burning stoves are just so efficient nowadays, and they're fairly inexpensive, and you've been out there. Mm-hmm. The one resource that we have that just kind of stands out at you, and sometimes it slaps you in the face if you're not watching, right, is trees. Mm-hmm. And those trees, when they've gone their cycle, they can always be used for firewood. And firewood in a good, efficient wood-burning stove in the size of these houses is really all the heat that most people are going to need, even on the coldest nights. Mm-hmm. If they've got those cranked up, they might crack a window just to equalize the temperature.
Those the stove there, is that can you cook on them?
Well, you could. You're not going to, unless you're a really, really good and talented and efficient chef. Right. I don't think you're going to pass the cordon bleu school of cooking on one of them.
Hey, but okay, let me ask you another question.
Yeah.
Do you homeschool? Does Kelly homeschool the kids?
Not yet, but we are definitely looking forward to being able to do that once the members are here. One of the very first members that's going to be here is our original teacher, and my boys just adore her, and we're looking forward to getting that started because our public school system is great. Mm-hmm. Ours here where we are, not the system in general, mm-hmm. but they still get the school lunch money program, which means that they have to do a couple of silly federal things that we don't agree with.
Well, let me,
and to get them. Mm-hmm.
Well, my question is, as kids move there, would they know they're living off grid, or would they know that they're not living like the worldly society that is out there?
Well, yeah. To start off with, they're going to have access to the internet and all their videos. And the silly things they can find on YouTube, like even my young guys do. But, even in the beginning, what we're putting together as far as education for the kids could look like the TV show, what they did in the Waltons Mountain TV show where they had a one-room schoolhouse. I mean, we could do that now with the age range of the kids if everybody wanted to leave them homeschooled, because we have the people with the education and the curriculum. I mean, we're literally talking about one of the members has already put together an educational curriculum for anyone that wants to homeschool.
Look at that. Hey, here's a question from our moderator, Jay. She says, do you think that the community there, phase 1, 2, and 3, I guess, even more than that, however far you go with this, do you think it will change the politics of the surrounding community?
Oh, well, there's no doubt. We had a simple little thing happen with one of the workers this past week, and I hadn't gotten to meet the new county sheriff personally. And, typically the county sheriff doesn't get up out of the office and come out, on site several miles out of town for someone that's got a distressed vehicle call. So, they're very aware of what we're doing and love the people that are coming to it. Our county's already very conservative, but yes, with the political force that we'll be able to wield as one community, I can't imagine if someone wanted to be a county commissioner out of our community, they wouldn't be able to make that happen someday.
I remember we were talking about some of the opinions which aren't from the local community, which don't appear to be favorable to your community, and in sort of a mocking way, calling them shacks and crazies in the forest and tinfoil hat people. But you know what? The thing of it is, people are trained for that because it's anti-culture. It's not the norm. It's not how people do things presently. So you're breaking ground. You're breaking the mold of what a community should be and could be, because the system has presented the way that they say it should be. And I think most people would agree that the system sucks. It's foul. It's contaminated, and they're trying to drag people by force of law into that, where you're reversing things back the way they should be. So I think over time, their community is going to change their opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, change scares some people, and it's just that simple, that they're comfortable in the life they have, whether it's a good life or not so good life. But the one thing that they don't want to do is spend the energy to change or, learn. Mm-hmm. And so, here comes this new thing. And even though it's all legal, they can't stop us no matter how many complaints that they lodge. They're not going to stop what we're doing. Mm-hmm. The more people God send us, the more we'll build and the stronger this thing will become. But when it comes to the local people that fear change, I'm not building this for them.
And well said, and way to end the show. All right, Jeff, as we get to the end of the program, anything you'd like to say about your community there? You go right ahead, how to get there, how to get information, or whatever you want to do.
Well, yeah, I hope we don't have too much time to fill, because without going into the individual members, since we don't have enough time for that, just the website. If you're interested in this, go to myozarkhomestead.com and just check out all the different little things. And we've got more building plans than are on the website itself. And the pictures that I sent you the other day of where the project is currently, It's just people that are coming out to the property. It's really knocking their socks off that this much is being done. And it's exciting because people want to become involved in it, want to become part of it. And if it's right for both us and them, there's nothing that's going to keep us from that happening. So myozarkhomestead.com, and we can start and go from there.
All right. We're getting a lot of positive comments in the live chat about this program that people really enjoy. And I've been rolling the pics through the whole process here. Hey, is your family back in the car?
They are. The kids. Yes, the kids finally got tired.
Okay. Pass the phone around and tell everybody, say bye, Daniel.
All right, guys. Say bye-bye to Daniel. Mr. Daniel.
Good night, Daniel.
Night, Kelly. Night, boys.
All right. All right, Daniel. I had fun. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.
All right, everybody. That was Jeff Harness of the Ozark community, survival community, one could say, the way God intended. Well, I think we could look around in our neighborhoods, and as we see people walking around with their drawers hanging down, I'm not sure that's the way God intended that to happen, or those with the skinny jeans, or those with the tattoos. I don't think you'll find any of that, or the piercings and the body sculptures and whatnot. I don't think you'll see any of that. out there at that community. So, hey, next week we're going to have Bill Bean with us talking about how to get out of alien abduction. He's got methods. He's seen them. He said they're out there. And if Bill Bean says they're out there, then you know they're out there. And then 2 weeks we're going to have with us Ray Mono. And this is interesting, too, because he says prepping is good, but why don't you include some spiritual warfare? He'll tell us how to do it in a couple of weeks. If we haven't had a guest on the program you'd like to see, drop me a line at edgeam@yahoo.com. Glad everybody had fun with the program tonight. And next week's going to be another great show. The show will begin to replay in the main player in its entirety, where you'll be able to see my ranting points again, only if you do not refresh your browser. If you refresh it, you're going to see the YouTube version, which is just the interview section. It's been a lot of fun. Daniel Ott for The Edge. Bye-bye.